Good afternoon, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. This is another clip for the atheist community, and last night you didn't seem to like me when I was drunk, so we'll try it sober. Essentially, I think this clip's going to be about the definition of futility, being an atheist in a lab coat, praying to a God that they don't believe in, and thinking that they are demonstrating the fallacy of the power of prayer. Did you get that? If you don't believe in the God theory that you're attempting to put to the test, which you're advised not to by some of the big God theories, if you don't believe in the God theory that you're praying to, don't expect to get any kind of a result at all. I mean, I would say this indicates the God theory, the creator of the universe, is not a fuckwit. So it becomes very difficult to provide any kind of proof that any atheist is interested in paying attention to, if they want it to be done in a laboratory by an independent scientist with double-blind control studies, because that's not the nature of the beast that we're talking about. I am going to tell you some of the experiments that I have done to probe the nature of my relationship with the creator of the universe. But before we get to that, I would like to mention that there's an awful lot of atheists who have admitted to me that they accept that the karma laws always work. Now, I don't talk a lot about the karma laws because I'm not a Hindu or I'm not a Buddhist, and they've got it pretty well sewn up. But the idea that what goes around comes around, I've never yet met an atheist who claims that that's bullshit, because it is so obvious in day-to-day life. People want to do selfish, greedy things, and they get away with it for quite a while, and eventually it catches up with them, and it generally catches up with them between 3 and 7 times harder than what nastiness they put out. Yet these same atheists who accept that what goes around comes around, that the karma laws function pretty well and are easy to observe in day-to-day life, none of the atheists have got the faintest clue what entity administers the karma laws. I mean, what keeps track of who's been good and who's been bad, and who deserves to smack himself in the mouth while they're cutting firewood, talking about how they're not a Christian, and how come Russell Hinds, after a career as the most corrupt politician in the history of Queensland, finally got so greedy that he ate himself to a size where his knees collapsed and he was too fat for the total knee replacements, and he trapped himself in a wheelchair, and he still couldn't resign because he had too many crooked fingers in too many corrupt pies, and he couldn't stand the thought of a successor finding out how corrupt he'd been. And eventually, like Douglas Adams said, his bowels rose up and strangled his brain, and he died of cerebral secondaries from colon cancer. And he got his just desserts. He was trying to grow a new arsehole in between his frontal lobes because his outlook on life was so shitty. He got his just desserts. Okay? And a lot of times, that's what's going on if you pay attention. I mean, as it says in the Messiah's Handbook, reminders for the advanced soul. Don't suppose any atheists have ever read that, have you? Well, funnily, I was an atheist when I read it. I was pretty impressed by it too, even though I was an atheist. The Messiah's Handbook, reminders for the advanced soul, says, the mark of your ignorance lies in the depth of your belief in injustice and tragedy. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the is calls a butterfly. Okay, that shook me up a bit as a teenager. But on the subject of is Warbles telling the truth when I say that I used to be an atheist, just excuse me while I put a bit of wood on the fire. I used to be the sort of atheist who delights in tormenting people who have a God theory. And I used to quote Robert Heinlein at them. There's a book of Heinlein's called Time Enough for Love. And in the book Time Enough for Love, there's a couple of segments called The Notebooks of Lazarus Long. And Lazarus Long was supposed to be the fella who came up with such little gems as Cheop's Law. Nothing ever gets built on time or within budget. He also came up with never try to teach a pig to sing, it wastes your time and it annoys the pig. But his religious quotes were pretty good as well. Oh, what was another one? In a mature society, the term civil servant has the semantic meaning civil master. Yeah? Lazarus Long was a pretty smart bloke. One of the ones he had on religion was, shamans may proffer their snake oil miracles, but I prefer the real McCoy, a pregnant woman. Also, the most ridiculous notion that Homo sapiens has ever arrived at is that the Lord God of all creation, shaper and ruler of the universe, wants the saccharine adorations of his creatures, can be swayed by their prayers, and becomes petulant if he does not receive this flattery. Yet this absurd notion, without a shred of evidence to bolster it, has paid all the expenses of the oldest, largest and least productive industry in history. I refer to organised religion. Hey, that's one of Heinlein's notebooks of Lazarus Long quotes. Okay, I was a seriously irritating, loud-mouthed atheist. I remember what it was like. I really held all believers in all religions in scorn and contempt because I had noticed bullshit in Christianity. I'd gone to 2 Catholic boarding schools after not going to Sunday school for 6 years, after having Presbyterians for parents who allowed me to stop going to Sunday school when I was 6. I didn't really begin to slow down on my atheism until I went nursing, and had a bit to do with curing the sick, comforting the dying and raising the dead. And the actual personal individual proof to me that atheism couldn't possibly be right was when I had an out-of-body near-death experience in the middle of a suicide attempt. It took me another 5 years before I found a God theory that works for me. And it's been a journey, you know, from secular agnostic to throbbing knob in the gob atheist to curious seeker to faithist. At least I try to be a faithist. I'm not a good faithist, but I try to be a faithist. So let's move on to some anecdotal evidence that convinces me that the Creator pays attention. First up, I would refer you to my series of clips on magical thinking. Have a look at the work I did inventing my own rain-making ritual and comparing that to the neighbours who were praying for rain in a church with a waterproof roof, and they kept their drought several months longer than I did. Their drought didn't break till Christmas Day, but by the end of November I'd had 130% of my annual monthly average rainfall. I then compared my own rain-making ritual with the traditional Aboriginal local rain dance. Worked about the same. I then compared the local Aboriginal rain dance both with and without a magic spell enhancer, and sure enough, you get 5 times more rain if you use the magic spell enhancer in conjunction with the rain dance. Don't know too many atheists who've ever tried to compare rain dances, but I've done it. Interesting experiment. Another time I noticed that when I pray for a safe trip, my spiritual mechanical maintenance program as I call it, which for those of you who haven't seen it on the particular clip, I like to say it sometime around Keys Twitch time starting up, pretty please Creator, can I have a safe trip with no hassles, no flat tyres, no running off the road, no running out the road, no seeing any accidents, no being in any accidents, no structural failures or mechanical breakdowns. I don't want to hurt any wildlife or talk to any policemen. It'd be nice if I don't get my windscreen busted. Right? And I noticed that when I remembered to say that little prayer before I got to the highway, I always got a really good, easy entrance to the highway. If I forgot to say the prayer, I'd quite often get to the highway and there'd be 3 cars from the left and 4 from the right and 3 from the left and 4 from the right. I might be stuck there for 3 or 4 minutes. But if I remembered to say the prayer, I got an easy run on the highway. Okay. Not a big indication, but it is one. I then decided to ask if I could have possibly the most popular parking spot in town in front of the post office nearest the intersection. And sure enough, if I asked for the parking spot, I got that parking spot, and I decided to delay the request longer and longer along the journey into town and see how far away from the parking spot I was driven by the time delay. And essentially, if I asked for that parking spot outside the 80k speed limit signs, I'm generally going to get that spot or the one beside it. If I wait until after I'm inside the 60k signs, no hope. You're going to be parking at random anywhere in the main street. It's a small correlation, but it's an interesting one. If you'd like to see a slightly more advanced example of that, a movie I posted last week called Sunfoil Mark III versus the lead acid parachute effect, head camera, extra torque demonstration, something like that. Definitely Sunfoil Mark III versus the lead acid parachute effect. Just search that movie title. And before I started the head camera going, I had a little talk to the creator and I said, pretty please, I know it's rush hour, 2:45 going into Glen Innes, but I would like you to clear the intersections and the roundabouts for me so I can make this movie with the head camera running so that I don't get stuck behind other cars, so I can just cruise on in there. 6 roundabouts, 5 corners. I only had to stop once for 1 car at a corner. That's pretty cool for rush hour up and down the main street. And as I say in the clip, as the roundabouts are clearing for me and I'm just cruising on in top gear at 1,100 RPM with 3/4 of a tonne of firewood on board, demonstrating that if you've got a solar panel on your car, the battery's full, the alternator's doing nothing, and the engine has sufficient torque at idle to drive uphill with a load. So as I said in the movie, what's the point of having a God theory if it doesn't work every day and in real time? Okay? This is where I get my definition or distinction between a powerful God theory and a powerless God theory. A powerless God theory is any God theory which sanctions its subscribers taking up weapons and using violence to defend their view of reality or their church or their house or their property or their person. You know, Socrates said it's better to suffer evil than it is to commit evil. And as far as I'm concerned, if your God theory is so fucking useless in day-to-day life that you have to wear a gun and hide behind the hole the bullet comes out, it's not much of a God theory. It's not much bloody use, is it? You have to run around doing evil things to keep yourself safe, so your God theory is not involved. And here's the thing, if you decide that your God theory might work, but you want to have a gun anyway, I don't think you get any help from the God theory. On the topic of insurance, for 20-something years, I paid membership for the National Roads and Motoring Association so that I could get breakdown assistance. And I decided, look, my car's not that unreliable. I don't think I need to pay this. Insurance is blasphemy, trying to economically insulate yourself from the consequences of your actions if you're living wrong. So I stopped paying the NRMA insurance premium. And I had a couple of occasions where the car gave me a warning that I had a fuel blockage. But I didn't pay attention to the warning. I should have. I had my warning 2 weeks earlier. I went 50 k's away and the car failed to proceed coming up the hill. I cursed myself because I had no mobile phone reception. I staggered to the highway, driving in 50-metre lengths as the fuel would get through the blockage. You could get the engine running and you could get up to 50 or 60 k's and then the engine would starve and die and have to roll again. So 5 miles down the road, I purchased 5 litres of fuel from a farmer on Sunday afternoon. And I put that in and on the side of the road at idle revs, yeah, the car ran. I started driving, got a couple of k's up the road, bloody stopped again. But I was somewhere where I had mobile phone reception. I composed a message to tell my son to ring the NRMA, send them out to me, and I would rejoin on the side of the road. I had the money to do it. As I was holding my phone up, ready to send the message to get the insurance company, the farmer I bought the fuel from was on his way to town with a bulldozer float. That's a truck that can carry a bulldozer. He pulled up and he picked my car up on his bulldozer float and he took it to the mechanics. Right? Just as I was about to give up on the God theory and go back to the insurance policy, the God theory delivered to me a farmer with a bulldozer transporter who carried my car to the mechanic. Right? My God theory works for me every day and in real time. If you can't imagine it, I'm sorry for you. You know, colourblind people can't see the spectrum. That's how it goes. And for the record, autism is not a slanderous defamation. and every word you think is a label. So just stop whinging. Ciao.